You're watching UATV News. My name is Ina Kosinska. Good evening. NATO will reinforce the support of Ukraine amid Russian aggression in the Black Sea. This was stated by the Secretary General of the North Atlantic Alliance, Jens Stoltenberg, following an online meeting of the NATO Council. Representatives of Ukraine participated in it as well. The Black Sea region has strategic importance for the alliance, Stoltenberg emphasized.
Russia continues to violate the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Georgia and Ukraine. It continues its military build-up in Crimea and increasingly deploys forces in the Black Sea region. NATO is responding by strengthening our presence on land, at sea and in the air.
Secretary General of the alliance also said Ukraine-NATO relations will not be affected by the aggravation between Kyiv and Budapest. He is sure that the parties will come to an agreement without NATO mediation. To remind, deputies of one of the local councils in Transcarpathia sang the anthem of Hungary after taking the oath. Security Service of Ukraine is studying possible interference in the internal affairs of Ukraine and threat to national security. Officers found materials promoting the so-called Great Hungary in the foundation of the Society of Hungarians of Transcarpathia. According to Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, Kyiv expects the submission of the action plan for NATO membership. Also, he told how Russia continues to militarize the Black Sea region.
I have informed the members of the alliance about the militarization by Russia as an occupying state of the temporarily occupied Crimea, with specific figures and evidence of its negative impact on the security of the Black Sea region. In addition, signs of nuclearization of the peninsula pose a serious threat to the nuclear non-proliferation regime.
Meanwhile, the UN pointed to another attempt of deception by the Kremlin. Russia is not a mediator, but an initiator of the conflict in eastern Ukraine. The joint statement by the United Kingdom, the United States and Estonia states this. It appeared to respond to Moscow's attempt to halt an interactive meeting of the UN Security Council, to which, among other things, representatives of illegal armed groups were invited. Western countries refused to participate in the Russian initiative. The UN didn't even broadcast the event on official resources.
We reiterate our support for the Minsk agreements and our firm commitments to see the peaceful resolution on the conflict with full respect of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We welcome the steps taken by the Ukrainian government to make progress in resolving the conflict and call on Russia to act likewise.
The number of the recovered from COVID-19 in Ukraine exceeds the number of new cases the second day in a row. 15,372 people have coped with the disease. At the same time, 14,496 received a positive test result for coronavirus over the past day. The capital remains the leader in growth, as well as Zaporizhia, Odessa, Kyiv and Kharkiv regions. The Ministry of Health associates the decline in the incidence with the weekend quarantine. It has been operating for 3 weeks. Now, according to decision of the Cabinet of Ministers, there will again be the orange zone throughout the country.
To reduce the incidence to 20%, this was the maximum effect we expected. The main goal was to stop the hurricane spread of COVID-19 and the increase in the number of patients. We will see the final result when this week ends and we can compare the statistics. But the preliminary data is, if we compare day to day, we already see a decrease not only in growth dynamics, but also in the number of new cases.
COVID-19 symptoms or a panic attack, psychologists warn. Looking for non-existent signs of illness can drive you crazy. And fear is not the best assistant during a pandemic. Both the psyche and immunity suffer. How one has to deal with it, my colleagues found out.
We've seen the cities empty. We saw how people from Wuhan are welcomed. We see tired doctors and the daily statistics are terrifying. All this news really shocked the nerves. People are afraid of getting sick. Finally, people began to wash their hands. Since the beginning of the pandemic, many have changed their attitude to hygiene. Experts say that now, having caught cold, people continuously measure their temperature. But in fact, in a panic condition, it can really increase. Those who seek symptoms will surely find them.
Мы часто можем сталкиваться с таким расстройством.
We can often face such a disease as hypochondria, excessive health anxiety, when people, in the absence of obvious symptoms, diagnose themselves with certain diseases. They start panicking, and also because of the anxiety only aggravates their condition. Doctors say that having contracted coronavirus, a pulse oximeter can be helpful, and of course strong nerves.
Жизнь живем, да, эмоции проживаем.
We live in reality. The virus is not something to be afraid of. It is quite possible to get sick, have a small temperature, and that's it. In fact, the consequences are terrible if they appear, but very few could face them.
The quarantine wasn't an easy challenge for many. Psychologists believe that negative thoughts can lead to panic. Dmytro did not panic. He underwent treatment with no emotions.
Мне помогали в основном лечиться мои друзья.
My friends volunteers helped me. They found me a doctor who prescribed medication. And most importantly, they find an oxygen concentrator for me. The worst thing is when the saturation falls. The organs are likely to fail. Dmytro advises not to look for symptoms on the internet. One should better strengthen the immunity and nervous system. This helps him cope with the consequence of the disease. The best helpers are sports and healthy food. It should also be remembered that a pandemic is not forever. All current restrictions are designed to preserve health and, in some cases, life. Reported by Roman Smoler, Inna Mazurkevich, UATV News.
Holiday elimination is one of quarantine and new trends in the design of Christmas trees and decorations. Europe is getting ready for the new year. Despite the limitations, the citizens of many countries do not lose optimism and faith in the fabulous magic of Christmas.
The post-quarantine crisis is not a reason to give up Christmas. Spain decided that way. They made the country even brighter than before. Almost all of Madrid was lit up with Christmas garlands. More than 3 million euros were spent on preparation. I wanted to come across Recoleta Street to see the new lightning with the Spanish flag and the giant Menina lady in waiting. The truth is that I find it spectacular. I think it is spectacular, and this year it is particularly nice to include the flag of Spain among the illumination. I think in a way it reminds us of those who are no longer with us. A face mask is a new trend of 2020. Manufacturers of Christmas decorations in the Czech Republic decided to support the trend and added a new detail to the faces of the Christmas pigs. They are all now protected from the coronavirus. Here in Czechia we say that one who fasts during the day of December 24 will see a golden piglet in the evening of the Christmas Eve. That's why we reacted to the coronavirus by adding a face mask to the piglet, so it would be topical in the current situation. An example of correct behavior during a pandemic should be served with all Christmas symbols, says a pastry chef from Hungary. Therefore, his marzipan Santa Clauses also wear masks. These small masks are made of marzipan fondant, and I will place them on the faces of the chocolate Santas, being very careful to cover both their mouth and nose too. In my view, by the time Santa comes, he will have to wear a mask because Santa has to show a good example for people, and it sends a positive message for children especially. For the children this is a natural thing. The older generation find it morbid. The government of Norway decided to ease the quarantine restrictions during the holidays. The country has allowed to invite up to 10 guests between Christmas and New Year. At the same time, the Prime Minister reminds everyone the basic rules.
The distancing rules are valid during the whole party, from the moment you serve spiced wine until you sit down at the table, when the presents are opened, and when coffee and Christmas cakes are served.
Meanwhile, an exhibition dedicated to the pandemic and year's attribute the face mask has opened in Japan. A whole country of masks is working at the event. The organizers follow all the rules, measure the temperature at the entrance and control the distance. Visitors can buy one of the 250 bright masks presented at the exhibition. Reported by Roman Smoler, Vadim Kramer, UATV News.
Premiere of a documentary about sports. Today, the film Yuki is being released in Ukrainian cinemas. It is about the Canadian Ukrainians who won the Stanley Cup and left their mark in the history of world hockey. Our correspondent saw the picture before it was released.
In an hour and a half, the creative team reveals yet unknown facts from the history of hockey. It turns out that the most valuable club trophy, the Stanley Cup, was in hands of more than 50 players who are Ukrainians by origin. And even the best hockey player and record holder Canadian Wayne Gretzky has Ukrainian roots. His father sometimes even calls him Ivan Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky spoke to his grandmother while living on the farm, all the time in Ukrainian. But even the old ones tried to talk to Wayne more in English, so that he could somehow adapt to the world. They wanted his grandmother not to teach him Ukrainian, which would lead him to nowhere in Canada, neither to school nor to hockey section. The production of Yuki lasted 3 years. As often happens, there was not enough funding for the filming process, for the official permission to show the archival videos of the NHL Championship and the use of the logos of overseas clubs. At the final stage, the State Agency of Ukraine for Cinema helped. Everything was ready for the premiere in May, but quarantine delayed the plans. Every story, every person I met gave me a desire and motivation not to give up, because there were a lot of problems during those 3 years. There was a time when I thought the film wouldn't work at all. But during communication, I realized that I was on the right way. Yuki's film crew has adapted the English version of the film and plans to enter to the American market in 2021. The topic of successful Canadian-Ukrainian hockey players should interest the viewer. Reported by Roman Smolar, Oleg Shumeiko, UATV News.
That's all for this hour. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Twitter and Facebook pages. See you tomorrow on the UATV channel.